Man, it has been a long 2 days of testing, wouldn't you say?
Definitely.
I don't think people realize the amount of work that goes into doing this kind of stuff.
No.
You know,
Different.
different.
It's hot in the south, and it's been a busy 2 days.
All the different fuel rail configurations and retainers and gaskets and throttle linkage and
injector spacers.
Injector spacers. It's unbelievable the amount of effort that goes into testing like this. But you know, our whole reason for wanting to do this thing was to truly validate, you know, what works, what combinations are best suited for one another, so that we can, you know, make sure that we're recommending and selling the best possible combinations for our customers. So there's a lot of stuff out there, and some of it's real, some of it's not. And
you know, we've seen some manifold testing on LS3 stuff, but never really seemed to have all of the popular manifolds that a lot of our platforms are you know, limited to using. You know,
right.
Like your composite manifolds and you know, our ported modded factory manifold, you know, variations with and without a 102. Then to our carb stuff, you know, we've tested some of this stuff on our chassis dyno, so we kind of already knew, but we thought it'd be great to A and B all the relevant manifolds right now, within reason. You know, there's probably a few we didn't snag up. A Super Victor, I've personally been there and done that with the CID on my car, so you know, it's, you know, we kind of already have the answers to some of that stuff. But this was phase one, basically, with our LS3 ported GPI 821, 823 castings, milled down to 66 cc's. Very common combination we run. Factory head gasket. We do have a forged piston in this engine to give us the valve relief, so we didn't have to fly cut and all that stuff for this big cam. But it does have
Molly flat tops, what we ran.
Yeah, Molly flat tops.
With a 1 mil, 2 mil ring package.
Factory rods, factory crank, and you know, we started, you know, baseline. This is a fresh engine, no run time. We scabbed up some used valve springs. It's kind of a kind of thrown together true mule motor.
Yeah,
we were going to beat the snot out of this thing. So
yeah, that's been quite amazing. You know, OEM LS, well, yeah, stock LS push rods. Which the only reason we ran those was we had a tub full of push rods, and we ended up needing a 7400, and we didn't have any 7400, so we had a stock engine sitting over here. We ripped the rockers off of it and grabbed a set of stock push rods and threw in this thing. We've been just beating the tar out of this thing for 2 solid days. How many 8200 runs?
We've gone 8200, probably 10 to 15 times. I think we went 8400 a couple times. That's where I've got the limiter set on, is 8400. But you know, we basically started this test with the factory manifold, factory throttle body, and you know, we make 3 or 4 pulls with each combination, you know, to make sure everything looks fairly close. And then what we were doing with every manifold was just simply taking the best run from each combination. We tried to maintain the same water temp, 140 degrees.
Approximately same oil temp and water temp, so that the mechanicals were on par. But you know, the plastic manifolds have a distinct advantage because of heat soak. You know, the aluminum manifolds are usually going to make their best power on the first or second, because once you start to get the heat soak, then they really start to fall off.
So, you know, we you know, so from the start we had our SS4 no fly cut, our ported heads, little 10.8 11-to-1 motor, pump gas. Very, very common setup that we put together for our customers in their street vehicles. And started baseline. We made, you know, 596, I believe, on the baseline pull, best baseline pull, which was a little shy of the last mule engine we had on the dyno that was an LS3. I'll get to that here in a minute. But then we moved to you know, our ported modded manifold with the stands out, the porting done, the radius bars, and we picked up an honest 10 horsepower. We made 606 and picked up 3 torque.
10 to 12 is usually one, and we've tested that before, so that's over and over. Seems to yield about the same result.
So
I think we picked up 12 on the last motor. Didn't
we
we?
did.
Yeah,
we did.
But that motor was a little friendlier. This you know, I think we figured out that this engine wasn't really completely ran in. It just keeps making more power.
So we ran, you know, a handful of manifolds yesterday, and then we started today with the fast 92 throttle body setup, and it made really good power. And you know, we've seen our rodded rod mod manifold with the porting is typically right in line with the fast stuff, usually slightly better. So it kind of raised some question, hey, what's going on here? So we ended up rerunning our modified manifold, our ported and modded manifold today, and the engine actually made 11 more horsepower with the same configuration that it did yesterday, simply because the engines ran in now after we had put probably 10 or 15 pulls from the first few manifolds on there. This engine started getting tight, and it picked up some power. So we felt like we needed to revalidate starting with that modded manifold, and we essentially ran every manifold again today. We did make a cam change, but we got some really good data. So with our modded manifold today, we made 617, I believe, horsepower, and the torque was, let me look at my notes, day 2, it's been long. So day 2, we made 617 horsepower at 6,700 and 544 torque at 5,500. The fast 92 throttle body, fast with a 92 throttle body, made 611 at 6,700, down 5 or 6 horsepower, which is what we typically see versus our modded manifold. And torque was all the way down to 531 at 5,500 though. And that was with the standard runner fast manifold with a 92 throttle body.
Right.
Now what we found, I think that was kind of the Easter egg and the whole deal, none of us were expecting, were the gains on all of these manifolds that could accept a 102 millimeter throttle body.
Mm-hmm. And that's contrary to what we see on the chassis dyno most of the time. We've tested this stuff time and again, and particularly on C6 Corvettes, generally my rule of thumb is, I don't even recommend a customer spend the money on a 102 throttle body until they get over, somewhere around, 575 wheel is usually where we start to see some gains. Anything below that, we just don't see any pickup. So I think one of the things we've learned by conducting these tests on the engine dyno in a controlled environment is that air boxes probably affect the performance of that 102 millimeter throttle body a lot more than we anticipated.
Yeah.
And when you think about it, most of the times on these, on the 5th gen Camaro and on the C6 Corvette, we're stretching that, flexible tube over that 102, and I think between the convoluted tube, or maybe it's disturbing the airflow going in, but we've definitely got something. We learned something here that the motor likes the 102. I think the car doesn't.
Well, it doesn't. I think you fix the problem in front of the throttle body,
exactly,
and you will see similar results with a 102 on all these manifolds. So we bolted the 102 throttle body on that fast manifold with the standard runners, and boom, all of a sudden we're up to 625, up 8 from our modded manifold, peaked at the same RPM, 6,700. 538 torque at 5,500, which was still 6 foot-pounds less than our modded manifold, which is what we normally see. But that fast, the 102 throttle body really woke it up upstairs. Mm-hmm. So we said, okay, let's rip this thing off and throw some mid-runners in it. That's a combination more and more people are running. We've done that on some of our 416 stuff as of recent. So we did just that, and power jumped again to 632 at 7,300. It moved peak power up 600 RPMs with that mid-length runner.
Yeah. Which wasn't a surprise. And destroyed the torque, which also wasn't a surprise.
It did murder the torque, so we're all the way down now to 519 torque at 5,700.
Ryan, would you say from a lot of the inquiries we get from our customers that probably one of the more misunderstood things that we deal with is the proper matching of components to put the power band in the desired location. In other words, you get a customer who reads about an intake manifold that made this much power, but they don't really think about where my converter flash is, where I use my car, how I drive my car, where I want my power band.
Exactly.
And we see a lot of that, and so one of the things we try to do is help educate our clients to make sure that those components are being matched up to deliver the best possible result, and that's part of the reason for some of this testing. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of times customers are trying to work around the confinements of maybe their engine bay or their specific criteria they're trying to meet, and sometimes you flat out can't make a combination happy in some situations because you can't get the right converter for what you need to do. It's not going to be streetable enough, you know. So these are all things we wanted to hash out with these manifolds so we can properly put. I'm not going to put one manifold on a car you know, that needs a 6,000, 6,500 RPM stall with a 6L80 transmission. It's going to be hard to get there with the converter. You know, that's going to be a setup for a turbo 400 or 4L80. Something like that.
I would say when you weigh when you weigh the performance versus the price point, I'd say every manifold we tested has its place in the market.
Absolutely.
Every single one of them. So there are no winners and losers necessarily in this testing. Just really trying to figure out where these components fit best for our clients' needs. And I'll be honest with you, I was a little surprised with the LOD manifold. That was an interesting thing. The Raphael, I believe, he rolls in there and rocks up with an intake, and so we bolted on the engine while he's here. And you know, for an intake that fits under the hood that performs with and slightly outperforms the high ram in that application, that intake definitely have a place for our customers. Now, the price point's a little pricey. Obviously, if you're looking at performance per dollar and you don't care about your hood, yeah, high ram's probably a better value for the power gain. But
it could be.
Most of our clients like their hoods, and so it's you got to figure out where it fits.
So in summary, on the plastic manifolds, you know, it's hard. It's absolutely just hard to beat a factory LS3 manifold that's ported and has the radius rods up to 6,800, 7,000 RPMs. If you're staying below 7,000, stay with the composite manifolds. You know, we've proven this time and time again that LS3 manifold is a fantastic piece. Yes, the long runner fast did outpower it in horsepower, but it gave up an equal amount of torque only with a 102 throttle body.
Only with a 102 throttle body. So you're looking at the price of the intake, the price of the throttle body, the modification of the airbox before you're going to get the gain of that.
Yes,
and we're not even sure what that result would be on the car. It's not going to be as good as what we saw in the engine dyno. So
yeah, so we moved to the same SS4 cam, no fly cut, with the LOD, the high ram, and the CID. And I think we ran the high ram first yesterday. So high ram with a 92mm throttle body, boom, 642, excuse me, at 7,300, and 511 torque at 6,300. And we thought, wow, it's about what we've seen on the chassis dyno, that 30 area versus our modded manifold numbers sound pretty close. So we said, well, let's slap this 102 on it because we had the high ram for the 102 plenum, and it woke it up big time. 655 at 7,400, and torque jumped to 525 at 6,300. It was like
Craven's mare, wasn't it?
For the price of the manifold, good bang for the buck. But you know, it's going to require a combination that is obviously a little bit more max effort, that either has adequate hood clearance, firewall clearance, or a customer that doesn't mind getting the sawzall out. One or the other. Right. Yeah. But it's good. It's an equal length manifold. Distribution is great with it, and it works well, and it's priced great. I mean, well under $1,000 with fuel rails for a big time manifold. It's a nice piece. It's one of those things. It's hard to beat for the money. You know, we moved on that next manifold. You know, as soon as we were wrapping that high ram test up, Raph pulled up with the LOD, so we said,
great timing.
Shoot, man, let's get to it. So
how you doing? My name is Raph Fischetto. I'm the owner of LOD Speedworks. This is my manifold. We call it the X1. So right now it's for an LS3, but we have the LS7 and the Cathedral coming along the way. Shortly down the pipeline, should be here pretty soon. couple things about the manifold. It's a modular 3-piece design. We have a 92mm snout, we have a 102mm snout. Forgive this one for port alignment, it is a tester, so the final product looks a little bit nicer, but this is our tester for the dyno. We will have another lid coming along. This lid right now is mostly for the Zeta platform. Chevy SS's, Camaros, CTSVs, it'll all fit up to that firewall nicely. Basically, if you can fit an LSA blower on it, you can fit this manifold on it, and it'll fit no problem. So we do have a Corvette lid coming along as well, which will be a bit more low profile for the Corvette guys that want one so bad. So it's coming, guys, it's coming. But other than that, I mean, you could imagine it, we could do it pretty much. We can put an intercooler in between it. We can put a butt plate there. The possibilities are pretty endless on this manifold. So I hope you guys like it, and we'll see you out there on the track.
Get to it. So we slapped the rails and injectors on there, and we ripped it only with the 102. We didn't, at this point, we didn't deem it necessary to beat a dead horse with this 92mm throttle body, because we had already established these manifolds are really, if they'll accept the 102.
Did we not test the LOD with the 92?
Sure didn't. Sure didn't. We put the 102 straight on it, and power jumped 3 from the high ram all the way up to 658 at 7,400. Torque dropped from 525 with the high ram to 512, but it made peak torque 300 RPM sooner than the high ram, which is interesting, because you'd think the shorter runner of the LOD wouldn't do that, but completely different taper on the runner, different cross-section area in the runner, and a huge plenum on the LOD. Really big plenum, and I think all those things played into that result, that it tended to peak torque sooner.
And it carried the RPM.
And it carried the RPM. Not only did it peak at the same RPM, or maybe 100 later, but it actually held its head up better to 8,000 than the high ram did. And that was the shock of the day, because we had tried this on the chassis dyno, and the manifold was it only picked up like 12 horsepower. I will say, you guys, you really have to check this port alignment.
A lot of manufacturers actually leave some materials so that that can be, so it's always better, you can take it away, but you can't put it back.
That's right.
And so you'll find that most of these aluminum intakes, they do have some additional materials so that you can mill those things to fit and properly align your ports, and we find that many times that isn't done or even looked at, and that's certainly, if you don't have proper alignment at the top of the port, it will definitely affect the performance of the intake.
Top and the sides really can kill the performance, and being that we had our 281cc LS3 ported heads on here, it gave us a little bit more pad with our port alignment with these manifolds truly being out of the box. These manifolds aren't ported. The only thing we had to do to any of the manifolds was some milling on the flange to bring the roof of the manifold runner down to the top of the head port to line up, which, like you said, you don't know what the manufacturer doesn't know what that manifold's going. So his manifold was a big shock yesterday. It turned out great. I think, talk about a manifold really having its place. Clears the factory cowl on a 5th gen Camaro, clears the factory hood, and offers the performance of a high ram within 10 foot-pounds of torque, and actually outpowers it a couple up top on a standard shelf hydraulic cam that's really not even cut for that kind of combination. It was a really good surprise to see, because it's the manifold has so much potential in that market. I mean, we've needed a manifold like that for quite some time, and I think we'll have that in production pretty soon. Then we slapped one that everybody's been wanting to see, the CID manifold. So we had a CID manifold with a sheet metal elbow on this thing that had a 92mm opening. If it wouldn't have taken me 2 hours of grinding yesterday to accept a 102, I would have tried it with the 102 on it.
Isn't that a beauty?
Guys, alright, this is a mailbox, okay? I understand, it helps clear under a factory hood. It can get you by in a pinch. And it's not the worst thing on earth, but it knocks the power out of them. This thing made with a CID manifold and that elbow with a 92, Somehow it still mustered. It did 651 at 7,400 and 513 torque at 5,600. So what we saw here, once again, CID has a huge plenum, and roughly a 5.5-inch runner. You think, man, this thing is gonna, be crazy up top. It had the broadest RPM range of any of the aluminum manifolds. It peaked torque sooner and carried the power better than any of the other manifolds, but the plenum is insanely large, and it is a max effort manifold. It's not really something you typically put on a grocery getter.
Now we picked up between what did high ram pick up between a 92 and a 102?
So high ram from a 92 to a 102, we saw a bump 13 horsepower.
So it's conceivable to think if we'd have put a 102 on the elbow, on the CID, we should have saw probably somewhere between 10, 12, 13 horsepower. All things like that.
Potentially, if it mathed out like that, but how much?
We don't know.
We don't know what this tight radius would have cut us back, even increasing the flow, before the bend. But what we can tell you is we ripped that off and we strapped on a 4-barrel AccuFab throttle body. It got nasty. The thing made 671 at 7,400 and 527 torque at 5,700. So
21 horsepower of the throttle body change.
Yeah, that's the proper combo for that manifold. If you've got to put an elbow on it and you're naturally aspirated, don't do it. Find another manifold. I mean, it's not the manifold for you. That manifold made more power than the rest. I know I've seen some rumblings that the high ram outpowered the CID, and I kind of wanted to know that myself. Yeah. So part of the reason I wanted to run all these manifolds with this small cam is because as your camshaft and your combination, your compression, camshaft increase and the combo gets more aggressive, these manifolds are only going to start to work better. We are really hindering these aluminum and short runner manifolds with these, SS4 is kind of a baby cam in the grand scheme of things for a manifold like that. Yeah. And so is our compression. We're way tame. We're on pump gas. So I wanted to see that, because if that manifold makes good power with this combination, we know once we move into the bigger hydraulic or solid roller stuff, it's only gonna get better. Right.
And we saw that with the cam change we made today.
Yes.
And that kind of sets the guidelines for what you'll see as we increase compression ratio. And
that's right.
And
so today we pulled the cam out. We put a cam in that's in the 240s on intake duration, a good bit bigger, and bigger on exhaust duration, more overlap, more aggressive camshaft, really geared towards the max effort manifolds, the high ram, the LOD, the CID, the big dog manifolds, So we started with the fast, with the 102 throttle body with the mid-length runners, just to see what our cam change did, because we just did this with the SS4, and it made 650 at 7,400 and 519 torque at 5,700. So what did the camshaft do for us? Well, with the fast right off the bat,
like 19 horsepower, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. We went from 632 to 650, so we picked up 18 horsepower just with the cam swap, and that's with the manifold that's very low profile, doesn't have a lot of plenum. It has a that medium length runner. It's a nice runner length. We pulled it. And what did we do next? We went to the LOD next.
Mm-hmm.
So we put the LOD back on.
With the bigger camshaft.
With the bigger camshaft. So the rest of our testing has the big cam, rerunning all of the aluminum manifolds that we tried yesterday. And the LOD really stepped up. I mean, it picked up big time. It made a 686 at 7,600. 524 torque at 5,900. So it really showed up with that big camshaft, it was just, you know, the right combination of valve events, runner length, and could still stand to have more compression. All of these every camshaft and manifold combination we did.
I think
could.
with the runner length and front volume, I think that intake would carry some pretty good sized camshafts.
Absolutely, no, absolutely. It picked up big time with the big cam. So we said, well, yesterday we left one of the manifolds at the shop back in Jacksonville, the Sniper. We had some people asking about the Holly Sniper manifold.
We'd written off the Sniper a long time ago. We tried one on a 416. We were so disappointed that we pulled it back off while it was sitting on the dyno. Yeah. Put it upstairs in our inventory, and it's been there for what, a year and a half. And we were embarrassed to sell it. We just couldn't bring ourselves to sell it. So we thought we'd drag it out of the cobwebs, dust it off, and bolted it on.
Throw it in the flames and see what happens. So, you know, I got to tell you, I was a little bit surprised by it today. It goes to show you again that it didn't suck. It didn't suck at sucking. You know, the manifold really is probably stifled in a lot of these scenarios with the induction on the car, the cold intake or whatever you're running up front. You know, this thing actually made pretty decent power. So the fast 102 was 650. This thing was 667 at 7,400 and 522 torque at 6,300. A bit more narrow power band than the LOD. I mean, it fell short 19 horsepower versus the LOD, which is not a surprise. The Sniper doesn't have a very large plenum, and the bell mouth at the top side of it's very close to the roof of the manifold.
Yeah. But theirs almost got to make a 120-degree turn to get in the runner. It's,
you know, the little velocity stacks protruding to the manifold a few inches, so it's not the best plenum. But it actually did better than I thought it was going to do.
Yeah, me too. I was surprised.
So that was with 102 throttle body, obviously. Next, we unbolted it and we put the high ram on.
I think not to change this, but I think where we got so disappointed with that manifold is it just gutted the torque. And what we had is a lot of guys that like to put those on street rods, and because they look kind of cool, and we'd have guys that want to bring them in and put them on a Camaro that was running 6,600 RPMs,
right.
And it just absolutely destroyed the low end torque and didn't really put anything back in top. But I think today we found that that manifold too has its place. It's got a great price point, easy install. It's got hood clearance. As long as you have the right cam converter or a stick car, and you like to. And you got enough valve spring to run the RPM range where that manifold's going to be happy, then that manifold too has a place. So
absolutely,
I was surprised.
Next was the high ram with the 102 throttle body, big cam, 677 at 7,500 and 533 torque at 6,300. So it did just what we expected pretty much. It picked up pretty good. With the camshaft. So if you look at what this thing did with the smaller cam yesterday, high ram with the 102 was 655. It's 677 today. So we picked up 22 horsepower with cam change. So the fast only picked up 18 horsepower with the cam change. So now we're starting to see the more aggressive the manifold was, the more we started seeing with that cam swap. And it did really well. Nice power curve, carries out well to 8,000. Really happy with it. Like I said, if hood clearance and firewall clearance isn't an issue, it's hard to beat that manifold for the bang for the buck. It's priced right. And the last thing we ran today, kind of got time crunched down here at the end of the day. We kind of got some noise. We have to respect our neighbors, kind of.
Yeah, we try to shut it down about 6:30 when people are starting to have dinner. They don't want to hear a race engine, rattling their glass while they're trying to have dinner. So we try to be courteous.
We squeezed in a few hot pulls with the CID manifold. I really thought it was going to hit 700, and it probably would have with adequate cool down. But we ran into a couple things. We didn't have quite the cool down, but it still made 692. At 7,600, which topped the rest of them. This is with the 4-barrel throttle body.
Here was the betting line. Darren said 695.
Yep.
Let's see.
Darren took it.
Dan had 699. I had 703. Brian had 704, and you had 708. So I guess, yeah.
I guess we owe Darren dinner.
We owe Darren a, I don't know, Snickers bar or something.
So 692 at 7,600, 535 torque at 5,700. Once again, this manifold, actually the CID peaks torque really, really early and has such a broad power curve. It did really well. Like I said, with the cool down, I think we'd have cracked 700, but hey, it is what it is. One thing we did experience on these last few manifolds, though, we noticed our power start really plummeting past about 7,600. We feel like these manifolds really wanted to keep going, and like I said, we pulled some junk, used valve springs, and I looked at our CID yesterday.
Carried better yesterday, didn't it?
So yesterday I looked at this. At 8,000 RPM yesterday, even though we made 671, we were still in the 630s.
Yep.
Almost 640 at 8,000.
Oh, I can hear the engine get a little unhappy at about 75, 7,600. So I'm pretty sure valve springs are going
Today
away.
We were down to 612 horsepower at 8,000. So we know we're floating a valve train. The springs have had it. They were used. Who knows how many miles or pulls they had on them prior to that. But
I found them in a box in the corner of the shop.
Well, no, guys, we wanted to learn. We wanted to share some information. We want to put you guys in the right product for what you want to do with your vehicle. If you want to keep it 6,500 RPMs, we're going to put you in a plastic manifold, a ported factory manifold. If you want to go 7,000 plus, okay, we've got manifolds for that. Now let's talk about hoods, firewall, and
all the pros and cons. And it happens all the time. We have customers call, and we take a lot of pride in trying to advise them based on our experience, what's going to be the best bang for their buck, what's going to fit their needs the best, and hopefully guide them down a path that's going to meet their expectations and keep them coming back and telling others. And that's really how we built this business, and that's why we continue to just take care of people like you take care of them with your family, and things work out.